And welcome to Quilters Question Time. This is our May 2025 live question and answer session. I anticipate that we might have more members joining us this evening than we have normally. It's been quite a ride the last 24 hours, and so there is much that we need to chat about. We do have questions, and it is fully my intention to answer the questions that those of you have sent in. We have a nice range of questions, and of course we have our usual prize draw. 2 lucky winners. I'm going to draw the numbers out of my trusty little bag here that has been with us right from the start in 2019. Incidentally, I am deliberately wearing the dress that I wore for the very first class that we did, which was piping and binding. Anyway, what are the prizes this evening? Well, the lovely ladies Michelle and Claire at Cow and Giraffe are going to sort out 4 fat quarters for 2 lucky winners. So what I'm going to do is draw 2 numbers out, give them to David. The 2 lucky winners will be contacted and asked to go onto the Cow and Giraffe website and choose 4 fat quarters, and then Claire and Michelle will send them on to them. So, and Peter's not here. Peter's gone to Warrington, and he is having a meeting about a big sculpture that is being put up in Warrington, and he might currently be in IKEA eating Swedish meatballs. He said, "Shall I have Swedish meatballs for my tea? Will that make things easier?" To which I replied, "Yes, I'll definitely make things easier for you, but perhaps not for me. What will I eat?" Anyway, so perhaps we should just ask David to welcome you as he normally does.
Okay, hi everybody. First on the comments tonight was Antari. Thank you for your kind words, Antari. Anne Birch, Patricia Curtis, Judith Henderson, Kathy Hiscock, Jean Cross, Joe German, lots of people from UK, Kath Kelly from windy Shetland. So hopefully you can all hear us loud and clear, apart from the echo from my computer, which wasn't switched on to silent earlier on, so apologies for that, but yeah, hopefully you can all hear us and we're good to go. Okay.
So I hardly know where to begin, really. I deliberately sent my email to you saying that I had decided that it was time to move forward with closing the business. I deliberately sent it yesterday because I rightly anticipated it would create quite a lot of email traffic and comments. I have to say to you that I have been somewhat overwhelmed by the responses that I have had. I have had quite a lot of attacks and a lot of support, and funnily enough, when I did stop reading the Facebook page, the nice messages were harder to read than the difficult ones. I also think that as a kind of Yorkshire woman, I should get a grip here and kind of control myself, but I'm afraid I'm quite unable to do that. However, I am a great crier. I have a wonderful friend, Donna, who always says to me, "Have you started crying yet?" I am upset because I am trying to do the right thing, and you all matter hugely to me. And this whole, not just Quilters Question Time and the garment making classes, but my whole sewing and teaching career is immensely important and personal to me. And as you can imagine, any negative feedback is very wounding, because I try to be as generous as possible and share everything, not only in terms of my knowledge, but also in terms of the package that we created for you. And none of this, comes about with just 1 or 2 people. That it is a very small team, but it is a very loyal and very dedicated team. David has worked tremendously hard. I've worked tremendously hard. Kelly is just incredible. She is always there answering questions and dealing with things in the most kind of dignified and gracious way without ever passing comment or doing anything. She's totally reliable. Peter, my husband, has been unbelievably supportive of this whole thing, and it has been very disruptive in terms of his life, how Quilters Question Time has taken over our house for such a lot of time, over such a long time. And I kind of want to explain why this is so important to me and why I have decided that we are moving towards closure, but maybe not as quickly as I said in my message yesterday, my email yesterday, because you obviously really want to carry on with the Facebook group and with the classes. So when David initially approached me to do the classes, you know, I had reservations, and you know, a lot of my reservations, and David will back me up on this, at the time were that I was unsure about filming all of this stuff and putting it out there, because once it's out there, it is out there and you totally lose control of it. And this is decades of really hard work. It's not about talent, it's about putting the hours in and building these skills and developing these classes and these techniques. And the first series went kind of really well, and so it encouraged me that it was okay, and I felt and continue to feel that, you know, you've invited me into your home, I've invited you into my home. Although we often, you know, don't meet face to face, occasionally some of us do, we're kind of friends on that level. But even now I'll get a lady and she'll say, oh, I loved that class and I've been working really hard at it and I'm just going to teach it to my guild. And I think, no, if your guild want to do it, they need to buy the class. This is how I make my living. So I understand that once it's out there, it is out there and you have no control over it. And I just say, oh, that's really lovely, glad you enjoyed the class, and kind of try to get over it. But it is why the classes are not downloadable and will not be downloadable, because they are too precious to me to let them go in that way. Okay, I have, well, yeah, they're too precious. Okay, now when David and I began, which is way back, David came to me with a plan, and initially he had some kind of, I forget exactly what, but it was, if we earn X amount of money, I'll take 30% and you take 70%, and if we earn more money than that, then I'll take 40 and you'll take 60. And right from the start, I wanted it to be an equal partnership, and I said, no, that's not how we're going to work. It's going to be 50-50. We each take a 50% share in this business. It's the only way it's going to work. And I made very conscious decisions about how I wanted this to be. I didn't want it to be so expensive that people were excluded because they couldn't afford it. I didn't want it to disappear after a year. You know, I have 2 subscriptions to BBC Maestro and to the Create Academy. They cost quite a lot more than we charge, and they disappear after a year. You know, I wanted you to have great value with these live sessions that are, you know, we give up 2 evenings and more each month, and we don't get paid for them, but we want to do that because we're invested in more than just taking your money for the classes. I was very sure that when we did our prize draw, we were not going to ask people to sponsor prizes. We were going to pay for our prizes. I was very sure that we weren't charging $11.99 for a class. It was £12. We were not conning you. Those things really matter to me. And so what I have tried to do is give you the best offer that I could give you. Now, David, as a 50% shareholder in the business, obviously it is a compromise, and you know, David has his ideas about how the business is going to work, and I have my ideas about how the business is going to work. And in any relationship, like your partners, your family, your friends, you make compromises, but that hasn't always been the way that I have wanted to approach the business, and there have been decisions made on things that I have found difficult and that have caused me discomfort. But I have to do David the kind of the fairness of allowing him to put his part, his marketing background and all the rest of it into how we approach the business. But there have also been mistakes made over the course of the years. I mean, what you're seeing here is absolutely kind of the Instagram snapshot of life at Quilters Question Time. You know, we are in, you know, our best stuff, we've prepared everything, we're looking good, the lighting's great, you're seeing us all happy, we're really happy to be with you. But that's not the reality of creating this business. This business has a huge number of different aspects behind the scenes, and there's a lot of kind of toing and froing and compromising, working out how we're going to run the business, and it's not always comfortable for me or for David. We're both very determined on what we want and kind of want to fight our corner, and mistakes have been made that have caused me great upset that make me want to step back from this, because this is my name out there, this is me presenting to you, and whatever in any direction comes from this, if it's negative in any way, I take that very personally, and it really matters to me. But it isn't just that. It has been and continues and will continue to be, as I said in my email, continues to be the most positive aspect to my working life. I've had an incredible career as a clothing designer, as an award-winning quilt maker, and so on. But the rewards, not just the monetary rewards, but the satisfaction, the feeling that I have made and that we have made a real difference in not only your sewing, but this really great community that supports one another, is never to be matched again. But it comes at a cost. The cost that I've just explained in kind of the running of the business, but also since 2019, my house has not been my own. And you may say, oh, well, you know, it's only a couple of evenings a month, everything. But I haven't made an exhibition piece of work since 2018 because of this job, and because my studio is not my own. Every time, every week, every time we film or do anything, any work that I am doing has to be cleared away, tidied up, and so on. I am not a person that shares the making of exhibition pieces with anybody until they are done and they go out and say what they need to say. And I want to reclaim that part of my life. I want this space to be my space, but I also want it not just for me, I want it for Peter. Peter has been unbelievably gracious in his acceptance of the lengthy disruption that Quilters Question Time has brought into our lives. And so, you know, that's something that I have sacrificed for an amazing gain, but now the time is right for me to take back that part of me that is very important in my whole creative life. And then there are other things that I've touched upon, and I know that we are all of an age where life is difficult looking after elderly people, but I have, in the course of Quilters Time, kind of watched my mum decline and die through dementia. I then had to take on the care of my mum's brother, my uncle, who was not really a person that featured in our family at all, and had spent 15 months being the one person that looked after him, took him to hospital appointments, visited him in his care home, emptied his house, did his probate, all of that stuff. And now my 91-year-old dad, who doesn't have dementia but does have issues, I am the person that is there for him. It is really hard. You know it's hard. You know that's difficult. And we also have a huge renovation project going on downstairs, which I'm immensely excited about. We are renovating this flat to the most beautiful place to be, and I have great plans in terms of all the things that I'm going to make for that. So there's no one thing that kind of, oh, that's right, I've had enough of that. You know, it just isn't simple. It's just not the easy thing that you see on the other side of the camera. And I thought that I was being very fair in giving you over 18 months to enjoy your classes, and clearly you feel that, or a lot of you feel that that is not the case, and so I take that on board. Now, we have to stop selling classes at some point, because we cannot keep selling classes, because people have to have the time to watch those classes. And so this is my proposal, and this is what we are going to do. So in the same way that I explained, the actual store will close at the end of August. So if you want to buy anything, you have up until the end of August to buy it, okay? I am going to continue, and David and I are going to continue with the live sessions, as I said, up until December, Christmas Live. I think I want this to continue to be the positive, really fun evening that it's always been, and I want you to get your questions in and make use of any help that I can give you until we finish doing that in December. But then I want to stop doing that, because I want to have my house back, basically, okay? Now, if we're not selling classes, we don't have any income. We have earned a lot of money, but we have also spent a lot of money. We've paid a lot of corporation tax, VAT, personal tax. We have paid, sorry? Advertising. We have given Facebook literally thousands and thousands of pounds in order to attract customers. So yes, we have some savings, but I'm 64. I know the point is Peter's 74. You know, he's not going to be around forever. I feel the need to give him more of my attention. There's nothing wrong with him. He's fine, etc. But you know, he is 74. David keeps looking at his watch. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, David. So clearly we cannot go on forever, because we don't have any income, and we had hoped that we would be able to pay ourselves at least a nominal wage until David was able to find other revenue streams and my pension kicked in 3 years' time. But there are some savings there. We estimate, and we cannot say what will happen in the future, but we estimate that if we pare down our offering to allow the classes to be streamed for you and to continue, and we would obviously continue with the Facebook group, because you're absolutely sure that that is really important and you don't want to lose that. But we will say, and don't take me as my word, because life happens and I cannot tell you what is going to happen. Things may make this not possible, but currently we will keep your classes available to you and the Facebook group in operation until the end of 2028. So that is 2 years beyond what I said in my email yesterday. So that is 3 years and 6 months. Now, what we will do at that point is we will review where we are in terms of, do we have the money to continue with this? Do we feel we've reached the end? Where do we want to go from that point? And I also know that a lot of you have been very, very kindly offering solutions in terms of cost and streaming and all kinds of things. It is a tremendously complex business in terms of the membership all over the world, tax from different companies, all kind of things. We are not going to change that. We are going to stay with the current system, because administratively it would be incredibly hard and therefore costly in terms of man hours to try and change it. So this is the plan. The shop closes, the store closes at the end of August. We continue with the lives, and please continue with the lives. Join us, be part of this amazing community until December. From December onward, for the next 3 years, you will have access to your classes and the Facebook group. At the end of that period of time, we will review where we are financially and at what kind of stage we would think we are at, to see whether we continue or decide that that is the point at which we are going to close the business. So I hope, oh God, I hope you understand that it is about what we all need and the best for everybody. I want you to always enjoy what you have taken from Quilters Question Time, and when it does finally finish, I want it to be the most positive thing that it could have been for you, and then you will have achieved more than I possibly could have anticipated. So at this point, I'm going to just pass you over to David for a moment, and he can add anything that he wants to say, and I'll get myself together and we will answer some questions.
Thank you, Philippa. I'm sure everybody can understand the passion and the heartache that you have been through in working your way through this decision. So thank you so much. And there are lots of comments from people who are being very supportive and very understanding of the situation. So thank you to everybody who has posted words of support in the Facebook group. Thank you to everybody who's posted words of support in this live stream. And some of you have also sent emails of support, and we're most grateful to those. Hopefully now you will have a better understanding of why we've come to the decision that we've come to, and I hope that the offer that Philippa has made, that you will see that it is a very, as always from Philippa, a very generous offer. Okay, I think we need to change tempo and start to look at some of the questions which you've sent in. Thank you very much for all your questions. We've got quite a few. We will see what we can do in terms of getting through those. So I'm just looking at Philippa. I think Philippa's ready for questions. The first question that we had in was from Janine Pooley. And Janine says, I have been asked by a friend whose father has recently passed away if I can make a quilt using his heavy wool overcoat. Obviously, it's very dear to her and I'm unsure whether it is suitable to use. What are the fabrics to put with it, or a good pattern to use? Please help. I would rather not do anything than cut up a coat that is so precious to her. And she says, P.S. I don't have a photo, but it's a 50s style heavyweight black coat. Philippa, have you got any ideas for us, please?
Yeah, just bury me in the coat. Okay, yeah, that's quite an ask, isn't it? There's an awful lot of responsibility comes with that. So she must be a very dear friend. I wonder whether a quilt isn't the best use of the coat. I think that it will be, obviously, even when you unpick it, the panels will be quite small. Yes, there'll be quite a large back piece, but it'll probably have a seam down the centre back, and then obviously two fronts and the sleeves. I wonder whether you should make some kind of pillow with it, some kind of cushion cover, and I suggest that you kind of have a look online, but I think that you could probably make a really great kind of rectangular pillow or cushion with a gusset going round it that maintains the collar and the front buttons, and maybe it has a pocket and you could tuck a little handkerchief in the pocket or something like that. I think that's something that could be put in a special place and admired, and retain its kind of identity of what it was and who it belonged to in a different way to a quilt. And then also I think that there is something else you could do with it, because you will have quite a bit of fabric there, is that if you research online, there are quite a lot of shoulder bags and bags made from suit sleeves and part of suits and things like that, and maybe you could make a small kind of messenger bag type thing for your friend that she could use when she went to the shops or went out or something like that, so that she took a little bit of her dad with her when she went out sometimes. So I would do some research online, and I would try and find some images of things and print those off, and then go and have another chat with your friend and explain to her why you think these things might work more successfully and might help to kind of retain the identity of her father in a more meaningful way, really. So I think that's where I personally would start thinking.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to make sure I press all the buttons in all the right orders as usual. So the next question was from Antari, and you may have asked this, Antari, before the announcement, but you said, is QQT team going to be at Festival of Quilts this year, and is Philippa judging in the... I'm not sure she's allowed to tell you if she's judging or not, actually, but are we going to be at Festival of Quilts, and are you judging, Philippa?
So, seeing as I'm bearing my soul this evening, actually, I haven't been invited to judge, and just between the however many of us there are, we have a new judging team, and last year the rules changed, and we always used to be invited to write some comments on our judges sheets, which I personally found incredibly useful as an exhibitor. Always want to know what the judges say, and I also really love to give some feedback to the people that have entered into the show. I think it's tremendously important, but that had been withdrawn last year and we were told not to do it. However, me being me, did put some comments on my sheets. So I think I'm probably not flavour of the month. I may be reading too much into that, but I didn't stick to the rules. So I'm not judging, and no, we are not having a stand there this year, and I have to be honest with you, we probably won't have a stand there again. It's extremely expensive. It costs us around £6,000 or more, and as you already know, we're closing the store and we don't have that income to be able to spend on that. I haven't yet decided whether I'm going to go as a visitor. I think there's too much going on in my head to make that decision now.
Okay, thank you, Philippa. Hopefully that helps, Antara. That tells you where Philippa's at on that one as well. Next question is from Deb Hiltbold, who she says is in sunny Arizona. She says, a friend here in her town mentioned the word rip in a question. And Philippa, you said that you don't rip, but instead you clip a thread and then pulled out the long thread. Could you show us how to take out a seam? Thanks in advance. And that's from Deb.
So Deb, I haven't got any, I did read the questions beforehand, but as you can imagine, I wasn't too focused on thinking about the questions. My mind has been in other places. Do you know, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I'm always changing and developing, and depends what I'm doing different things. But I did a lot of teaching over many years in the States, and ripping out always sounded so incredibly violent to me. In England we say unpicking, and unpicking just seems gentle, and ripping out always conjured up images of the fabric getting damaged and ripped. So I tend not to use an unpick or a seam ripper, and what I tend to use is a sharp pair of scissors, and I just clip one of the stitches on one side and then perhaps clip it on the other side, and then I'll get a very blunt, like a tapestry needle or awl type thing, and I'll pull a few stitches, and then I'll just keep pulling from one side and the other. I find that works for me. But having said that, the reason we're in the kitchen again today is that I am working on a very special dress for somebody, which has been an ongoing project, and you may eventually get to see it, but at the moment it is a secret. And I have actually used a seam ripper from time to time on that, so it's always changing.
never say never, and if Philippa says anything, it's that there are no rules. So, yes, and I have seen a little piece of that dress, and if we do get a chance to show it to you, it is amazing. Okay.
Only after the event.
Only after the event, whatever that event might be. I will leave that up to you to guess. Okay. Next question is from Anne. And Anne says, I wanted to share about this creative exhibition. I went to Liberty on Monday to see the quilted house and the books containing more impressive quilting squares created to celebrate 150 years of Liberty. The diversity of quilting squares is impressive, but it was also lovely to briefly speak to other lady quilters who had, like me, travelled into London especially to see this work. I'd highly recommend a visit, and I've got a couple of pictures for you, but I'm going to hand you back to Philippa.
So I didn't really know anything about this until the actual exhibition within the Liberty store on Regent Street in London was unveiled, really. I don't know how it passed me by, but small quilt blocks were invited to be sent in, and apparently over 1,500 entries were sent in from all over the world, and over 1,000 of those have been assembled together to make a house, which I believe David has a picture of. And so Liberty, if you have never been, it is on several floors, and there is a big empty area in the centre of the store with a balcony or balconies on lots of little different levels, as you can see there. So they have this amazing space where they can suspend artistic work and all kinds of things. And so there is the fantastic house that has been created. And I know one or two people who have been and who are going, and this ends on the 24th of July, so there's still quite a long time for people to go and enjoy it. So if you are in London or near London and want to take the trip, you have until the 24th of July to do that.
Okay, next, well, it's not a question, it's some feedback really from Kathy Hiscock, who is a regular contributor, and Kathy says, hi everyone, just to follow up from a couple of sessions ago, here is the finished patchwork and quilted jacket I made for my daughter, and here's the picture, and it looks amazing. Kathy says she loves it. All the best to you all, and that's from Kathy Hiscock.
Kathy is really fantastic, and she looks so pleased with it. And I do love that artistic photo where she's just adjusting the photo so we can get a really good view of the back of the jacket. It looks amazing, and all your placement of everything is perfect. So well done you. I'm not surprised she's delighted. Will you make one for me?
Okay, I'm trying to work out which is my next question. We've got lots of pieces of paper tonight. Okay, the next question is from Laura Southwick. Or Southwick is that? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. And Laura says, dear Philippa, in a plique I occasionally drop off the edge. What is the best way to get back in place? I try to go very slowly, but it still happens. Must I break off and start again? I'm doing a quilt with 12 blocks and about 60 pieces per block. It's Esmeraldas Garden by Susie Sitcom, and I've got 7 more blocks to go, and I've got a picture to show you that goes with it, which I will pull up now. Laura, there we go.
It's a very cute little block that you've got there, Laura, and it has got an awful lot of work, and he's upside down, but I'm sure he doesn't mind.
Oh, sorry, I can't do anything about that.
Sorry. Okay.
He's doing a handstand.
Yeah. So what I think I can see here, I'm pretty sure, is raw edge applique. Okay. And so what you've got, sorry, not raw edge, turned edge applique. Apologies. So you've turned a seam allowance underneath and are sewing on the folded edge as close to the edge as you can get without falling off. Well, I think that you've got choices on this, and If you've only fallen off for a stitch or two, then I would just carry on and sort of get back on track and keep sewing. Because if you've only fallen off for the tiniest little bit, it's such a kind of busy, joyous piece of work that people are just not going to notice that, and it's not going to be vulnerable to coming undone. However, if you have fallen off the edge and you've gone quite a distance before you climb back on, then you might need to go back and restitch that. And I think it kind of depends how precious it is to you and kind of who it's for and where it's going to be displayed. You know, if it's on a wall, you might not notice. If it's on a bed, you might notice a little bit more. But you could unpick it and kind of pick up from the place where you fell off, or you could just go back in and stitch again. And I would tend to, if you were not going to kind of try and tidy it up, you've fallen off, but you do need to stitch that bit where you've got a little gap. Start a little bit before the place where you fell off. I would do a back stitch, 2 back stitches maybe, and then come forward, and then I would do the same at the end, and I would just blend in and I wouldn't worry about unpick anything. So I wouldn't get too hung up on it really. I mean, I think you've got a lot still to do, and I think it will be beautiful with 1 or 2 little wobbles or not. That's going to be part of its charm, and you might have to set that block upside down now that David's shown it that way.
I'm sorry, I must have, yeah. Anyway, apologies for showing your block upside down. The next question is from Melanie Wellborn, and Melanie says, I hope that you're both well and not too dusty. So Melanie's obviously been following Philippa's, or some of her Instagram posts about the building work and what she also has been telling us here. Just as, this is Melanie says, just as an aside, I helped to clean 1,000 recycled bricks to extend the garage for my car, complete with goggles due to the dust. And then she says, also my grandfather was a builder and did all our renovations. Apart from removing the wall between the toilet and the bathroom, my dad did this one Saturday when my mum was at work, and as you can imagine, she came home to quite a mess. I can't remember what she said, but she was very annoyed. So I think you can imagine Philippa has her renovations slightly more under control than that, although with builders you can never be quite sure. So the actual question on quilting says, please, I would like to know if Philippa ever trims the corners off fabric once the seams are sewn to reduce the bulk. And that's from Melanie Wellborn. Trimming corners off fabric, Philippa.
Okay, so Melanie, I might have the builders under control, but I don't have my husband under control. He decided that he was going to repair the lower part of the sash window in our bedroom about, I would say, 3 weeks ago. And as he was doing that, he cracked the glazing in the double glazed unit. So the lower half of the window came out and a piece of straw board was temporarily fixed in with large gaps around the edges. And it still has not been replaced, and we've had quite a lot of wind and rain over the last few days. It's really drafty in my bedroom and you can't see a thing, but there is an advantage to that because we've got scaffolding up, and even if the builders are on the scaffolding, they can't see into my bedroom. So do I ever cut the corners off? Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. I think you really need to take each case on its own merit. So I never trim off to make things kind of vulnerable for coming unstitched. So, if I'm doing something, I know it's not quite, it's garment making, but if I'm doing something whereby I'm making a cuff and I'm going to pivot and turn something through, bag it out, I don't cut diagonally across the corners, I fold things. But there might be occasions where a little bit of trimming or grading down is beneficial and will make the thing better. So without having specific, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Use your best judgment.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Hilary Davis. I think we've got a picture for this, but it's there we are. It's on a different piece of paper. Hilary says, I finally got round to quilting my feathered star quilt, and I would welcome suggestions for how to quilt the floral arms of the star. I was thinking about going round the shapes. Let me see if I can find the image for this. So it's Hilary. There we go. So I was thinking about going around the shapes, the flowers and berries, or flowers and berries, but I'm open to further ideas. I'm free motion quilting on a Bernina sewing machine, not a long arm quilt, and that's from Hilary Davis. What do we think, Philippa?
What we think is it's absolutely beautiful, and as I'm looking at it, I can see that all of your points are absolutely perfect. You've got no chopped off points, corners or anything. It looks amazingly flat. The colours are wonderful. You've done the most fantastic job with it. So it very much kind of depends what you want to do with that. What I think is that if you did something more linear, and it could be kind of wavy lines coming out into those points, you're going to draw the eye kind of out and also into the centre of the star. And I think that's really quite a nice thing to do, sort of pull your eye in there, but also give it movement. Whereas if you just go around the floral shapes and the shapes in the actual print of the fabric on those pointed bits, all you are doing is kind of just reinforcing what's already there. You're not adding another design element to it. And I think this is a really good opportunity to add another design element to it. And you might think about using contrasting coloured thread. So, you know, if you've got darks, you could use some orangey colours on there. You could use darker blue threads on your orangey colours or into your background. So I think you could play with thread colours to a really good effect. So I personally think I'd be quite tempted to do something triangular, linear, curvy linear, something like that, in order to give movement and pull the eye both out and in.
Okay, thank you. Well, a few people on the chat have obviously managed to get their squares into the Liberty House, so well done.
Oh, fantastic!
So there's a few people saying they're going to see them. Well, I did notice. I don't know how this works. I did notice on the Liberty site when I was looking for pictures that you can find where if you put a square in there, you can find where it is on the site. So that sounds quite exciting. So well done to all of you that managed to get your managed to get your squares into that. Okay, the next question is from Helen Geach, and Helen says, I really struggle to get my binding looking right. I've tried hand stitching back and front together, and I'm looking for ideas on what I'm doing incorrectly and how to correct it, please. And I did check, because we can check, as you know, what people have watched, and Helen hadn't watched Binding and Piping version 1, but the second version where we refilmed it, she did watch last year. So Helen, I know that you have watched the piping and binding class, but Philippa, can you give Helen any tips and ideas, please?
Helen, I need to have more information to know exactly what it is that is going wrong. So if you could send some images for us to look at for next month, I will have a much better idea. But without actually more information and actually seeing what is going wrong, and also give me a bit more information as to what you're not happy about, it's very hard for me to help you. So please, to be continued, if you wouldn't mind, it would be really good. Thank you.
So pictures, please, as always. It really helps us to answer your helps Philippa to answer your questions. Next question is from Diana Bowers, and as usual there is a picture with this, and I haven't got it teed up, but Diana says, I'm sharing a recently completed quilt for my grandson. The lessons on applique were invaluable, and I doubt I will ever make another quilt without piping. Thanks, Philippa. The quilt is based on Zootropolis by Sassafras Lane Designs, is that? And that's from Diana Bowers, and I will put the image up now.
It's a beautiful quilt. Sorry, I've got images on my paper here, and you can't see them. It's got all kinds of animals and balloons and all sorts of things. It's really lovely. You've done such a nice job with it, and I love the label. Oh, the places you'll go. September the 4th, 2023. Love, gig. That is so sweet. But that must be what you're known as, Grandma. And I'm delighted that you love the piping. I rarely make a quilt, do I? But I rarely make a quilt without piping. So thank you for sending us that. It was a joy to see. David, are we doing question 10? Sorry, before we move on to the next page.
Yes. oh yes, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, so Philippa is keeping me in order as usual. So question 10 is from Laurie Abbott Herrick. And Laurie says, happy spring. Have you ever, instead of quilting a top, turned it into a duvet cover? I don't like heavy quilts on top of me while sleeping, but my duvet weight is perfect. I've pieced a large top and want to use it on my bed. So Philippa, what do we think about quilting duvet tops?
I think it would be absolutely beautiful. It isn't anything that I have personally done myself. What I would suggest are two things. So you've already made a quilt top, so I imagine that it has got 1/4 inch seams, and so if you just sew a back on it, those 1/4 inch seams are not very wide and they are going to be vulnerable to fraying as the duvet cover gets washed, dried in and out of the washing machine, and so on. So in this instance, I would suggest that you get a very lightweight cotton fabric, a cotton lawn or something like that. The widths will be narrow, so you're going to need to piece it, and do definitely pre-wash it so that it's shrunk beforehand. And before assembling this into a quilt top, I would lay before assembling this into a duvet, I would lay your quilt top on this big piece of fabric, and I would do some stitching to hold the two together in the ditch or whatever you feel it needs, so that you are strengthening that top so that it will withstand the wear that it's going to receive as a duvet cover. If you were doing similar in the future and you chose a relatively easy design, you could scale up the width of the seam allowance to 1/2 inch or so, and you could overlock your seam allowances if it was a simple design, not too intricate, and then that would have the same effect of adding strength and ensuring that the fabric didn't fray in use. So go for it and send us a picture.
Okay, thank you. I like the idea of a duvet cover, a quilted duvet cover as well. Okay, the next question is from Coralie, and we haven't heard from Coralie for a while, and we now know why. Coralie says, I know it's been a while since you've heard from me, but I have a good excuse. And we've got a picture. There we are. And Coralie says, I've been helping to raise an adorable puppy whose destiny is to become an assistance dog with an organisation called Do Unto Others Assistance Dogs. She was with us for 7 months until shortly after her first birthday, when she graduated to her next level. And so the puppy was called April. She did not leave me much time for making quilts, but I've been planning to make a sofa-sized quilt to go with a decorative cushion, and you can see on there the decorative cushion that she made a while back, which my mom, now departed, embroidered very beautifully. Here's the cushion. Okay, so then the next picture, Coralie's given us lots of information here. So she said, here's the cushion. So for the quilt to go with this, what pattern should she use? She very much liked the Cleopatra's fan block, which you can see there on the left. But she says, the other day she saw our president, that's the USA president, giving a talk in front of a gorgeous wall of tiles somewhere in Saudi Arabia, and you can see that on the right. And Coralie thought that would make a beautiful quilt pattern. Here's a picture of the tile pattern, and she wonders whether you would agree. Do you think it would be good in foil and in pinks and greens to go with the cushion? And do you have any other comments to add to this, Philippa, please?
So lots of lovely things that you've shared with us there, Coralie, which is really nice, and very good of you to look after that puppy. It must be hard to let April go at the end of that time. You must have become very attached to one another, but you're doing a great thing. So, and also the cushion, the pillow is really beautiful. It looks absolutely gorgeous, really lovely colours. So the actual tile design that you have shown us there, it does look like a kind of skinny double wedding ring, doesn't it? And we do have the double wedding ring class in season 2, and I think that you could quite easily interpret that as a double wedding ring and then do an applique in the central area. The applique, the central area is smaller in the pattern that we've got, but there are lots of other patterns out there for double wedding rings, and it is actually the strip pieced curved section that needs to be reduced in order to give you more space to add an applique element to it. But I wonder whether this is two separate projects really, and that your Cleopatra's fan is the thing to do with the colouring to match the pillow, and then the other idea for the quilt is something to pursue kind of later on, because I don't see a very strong visual design link between the pillow and the tile design that you are showing us there, nice as it is. So I think what will happen with the Cleopatra's fan is that it will look like a stylized flower, which is perhaps more in keeping with the pillow. So that is just some initial thoughts on that, to maybe develop that further.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Anne, and there is a, I didn't tee this up, I'll tee this up shortly. Anne says, is it a bad idea to make a lap quilt with 6 very similar squares? I did the precision piecing class, and I'd made another 5 squares from the same fabric, so I had 6 squares. I planned to put them together as a small lap quilt around this time. We needed the window in this room repaired, and the Housing Association sent out an inspector who said that they did a huge amount of sewing and saw the squares I had made and said they were okay for a beginner, which doesn't sound very kind to me. They look rather nice. During our conversation, I mentioned that I was going to make a little quilt with the squares. They said it was a terrible idea and it would look cheap and ugly. I think the inspector was having a bad day, if you ask me, Anne. And some other pretty unpleasant things about the idea of using all 6 squares in a lap quilt. I packed up my sewing machine a couple of weeks after and haven't used it since. The squares are just pinned up on my board, and my husband suggested I do something with it the other day, but I just don't know what. So Philippa, I'll put the image of the squares up. But what do we think about making a lap quilt with 6 similar squares?
So Anne, that is really quite a sad story, isn't it? I mean, I think that you've been scarred by those incredibly unkind comments, which are totally unjustified.
Here's the
You've done a beautiful job. They look absolutely fantastic. They look really flat. They look really square. I can see you've got all your points there. Your choice of fabric works perfectly. You've fussy cut your fish really well. You've got your darks, your mediums, light. You've got everything that is required there to make a beautiful block. And having done one, no wonder you were so pleased with it and went on to do another 5. So I think that if that inspector ever sets foot in your house again, you should give him a good old boot up the backside and say, leave now, please. Anyway, I would definitely make it into a lap quilt. I think it's something to be extremely proud of, and what I would suggest that you do is to put some sashing between the blocks, because it will make it bigger. It will give you the opportunity to bring in one of those colours again, so you could choose a dark that works really well with the background of your fishes if you don't want to cut up the fishes. I would probably suggest you do it, it doesn't really matter, you could do it 1 inch wide, you could do it 1.5 inch wide or 2 inch wide finished. That will also make it easier to put the whole thing together, because if you just sew block to block, you've got some points with a lot of seam allowances coming directly together, whereas if you put some sashing in between, you are sewing to a plain piece of fabric, which makes things much easier. I would put on a relatively wide border, perhaps in the same fabric that you use for the sashing, and then I would pipe it, and then I would put a nice wide 1/2 inch binding on, and it will be absolutely lovely. So please take heart. Yeah, bad days just not in it. It's just totally uncalled for, and what gives them the right, quite honestly. Yeah. So please, I'm not just saying this, you've done a really nice job, and this needs to be finished, and I can guarantee that when you get that on a piece of furniture or on your knee and visitors come to your house, they are going to say how lovely it is. So get it finished and wait for the compliments.
Yeah, that block is one of the most popular blocks that we've had people coming in, and you've done a really good job of it. So well done for that. Okay, the next question is from Jacqueline, and we've got an image that goes with this, which I did tee up, so let's do that. So now Jacqueline says, thank you for the invaluable lessons. I have looked at my lessons. I have looked at my lessons and I couldn't find an answer to my question. I'm making my first baby quilt for my partner's great nephew due in September. I'm trying to mitre the corners, but I used 4 separate pieces of binding. The lesson I found was continuous. I don't want to join these as the long sides were cut from the length and width. The long sides were cut from the length and width from width to keep in line with the animal. So I think what she's saying is they're cut different ways, isn't she? It doesn't make life easy for me. Please, can you help? So Philippa, what do we think?
Right, okay, so what, I'm sorry, whose question is? Jacqueline. What Jacqueline has got there, the fabric that she has used for her binding is directional, and so she wants the image, whatever the image is, let's just say it's a little bumblebee, she wants the bumblebee to be the right way up all the way around the quilt. Now, I think that is a perfectly valid thing to do, but I would not try to mitre it. You cannot have a joining seam and a mitre on the corner of a binding successfully done. It is just too much bulk and just too hard. I would not do it. So what I would do is I would put each side on separately and then just kind of tuck over. So you've got options on this. You could put the top and the bottom binding on first, and then your side pieces would cover the raw ends at each corner, or you could cover an end, cover an end, cover an end, and cover an end as you work around the piece. So stop stressing about it. You don't need to do the mitres. It's not what you should be doing. Finish it off separately and tucking one over the top of the other. It will look much neater and it will be really lovely.
Thank you. Lots of comments coming in on YouTube to say that they agree that the blocks look lovely and the housing inspector should be shocked. So we can't actually say that, obviously, but we do think that your blocks were great. Okay, the next question is from Cheryl, and Cheryl says, can you advise me how to fold the binding? And I think we've got a picture for this. On a double wedding ring quilt with particular reference to the section shown in the attached photograph. So this is where it's got the joint basically. How should she go about folding and adding the binding, Philippa, please?
Okay, we have a class on this and I didn't get a sample made for this evening. It just wasn't the day to do that. But it wants to be cut on the bias, and I can see that you have done that, but my suggestion is that you don't do a double folded binding, you do a single thickness binding, because you've got a lot of bulk with the double binding that you are trying to get into that V shape there. And so if you go to single, you've simply got much less fabric to deal with. So that is the first thing I would say. If you haven't gone any further, you will be able to look at the class if you've got it in your library, and you will be able to trim that binding down to the width that you need. It isn't difficult, but I'm afraid my head is not in the right place today to struggle with that. So I'm really sorry. I'm pretty sure it's in further fabulous finishes, but it is out there. And if you want to ask that question again next month, I'll make a little sample to show you. But we do have it in a class, and it does need to be single.
Okay, thank you, Philippa. Right, final question. We're just coming up to time. So final question is from Ruth Farwell. And Ruth has an image which is well worth seeing. Ruth says, it's not a quilt or clothing question. I have a stuffing issue. We haven't had any stuffing issues before on this, I don't think. So here we are. Ruth says, I make these little animals. The pattern is from Funky Friends Factory, and Ruth says she is obsessed. And I can almost see why when we see the pictures. I love this little fox, but not so much the way his little cheeks look when they're stuffed. Is there a secret potion? Is there a secret way to get these pointy bits to be smooth and not lumpy or empty? Many thanks for sharing all your expertise, and that's from Ruth in Tennessee. What do we think, Philippa?
So Ruth, I have made a lot of stuffed animals in my time, and so I understand completely about this. In Saudi Arabia, we couldn't, when I lived there for 15 years, we couldn't get Christmas things, but we had Christmas bazaars on the compounds where there were just Westerners living. And over the time that I was there, I made 373 Christmas fabric teddy bears. And I never want to make another one again. I've got a little book upstairs actually, and it's got who I made it for, little swatches of the fabric and what number it was. So I did keep a record of it. I think it is amazing how much stuffing you need to put into these little things to really get a smooth, firm finish. And these days we all tend to use polyester. It used to be K-pop, which was a plant product, but these days we tend to use polyester. I think you just need to really get your finger in there and push wadding stuffing in there first, and that you may need some kind of tool. If there are any doll makers listening, you might have some advice, because I know dolls' arms and feet and fingers and things are really quite challenging to get all of the stuffing down into, but I think you need to really push it in there. Start with that. Start by pushing into those two little pointy bits, and then gradually fill the rest. And yeah, you as you already know, use an awful lot of stuffing to get the finish that you want.
Okay.
And sorry, David, we do have one more question, which is number 17. Yeah, right on the end. Yeah.
I'm not on it tonight, am I? So the final question from Anne Quinton says, Philippa, have you done a lesson on satin stitch applique, please?
So Anne, yes, I have. And it is in season 1, so you are almost bound to have it. So it is the raw edge applique class, which is 4, something like that. It's around there. It's fairly early on in the series. Okay, 6 or 7. Thank you, David. And I discuss it in detail. I talk about the threads that make a difference, the stitch, setting up your sewing machine, having tearaway stabilizer to support it. So lots of very detailed information, exactly what you are looking for. So hopefully that is a happy answer for you. Thank you. So our 2 lucky winners are Debbie Ellis and Gwyneth Harriman. Thank you. Yeah, you're going to have to be a doctor in your next life, David, because it's impossible to read your handwriting. Okay, so sorry, those 2 lucky ladies, Debbie and Gwyneth, we will be in touch. David will get in touch with you and let you know officially that you have won. We will ask you to contact Cow and Giraffe, Michelle and Claire at Cow and Giraffe. We will give you the link to that, and then you can choose what you want and they will send it directly to you. So thank you for joining us this evening. It's been emotional. Has it ever? Anyway, what I would like to say to you is, you know, without you, there is none of this. I do genuinely mean that. I am going to make myself cry again if I am not careful. Please continue to enjoy Quilters Question Time. Please continue to join us for these sessions up until Christmas of this year. Please keep the Facebook as the wonderful supportive community that it is. It is a privilege to have that, and I know, value it, and I really want it to stay as the very special place that it is, so that you can all benefit from that. I will be back on Thursday with the garment makers. I will be explaining what are we going to do going forward. I will not be doing all of the emotional, oh my goodness stuff. You don't need to sit through that again, but you can rest assured that you have 2 more years access to your classes than you had, God willing, inshallah, if nothing goes wrong. We certainly hope so. And at the end of 2028, we will take another review of that. So again, thank you all. Thank you to David. Thank you to Kelly. Thank you to Peter. You're all very important. You make something really special. Let's keep it that way. Thanks for joining us this evening.